Long ago, wandering monks came to understand a quiet truth. Peace is not something you force into existence. It is something you gently remember. When the mind stops struggling to become silent, it slowly returns to the silence that was always there. Tonight, we will walk through a series of gentle reflections. They are not instructions to follow, not ideas to analyze, and not answers to search for. They are soft reminders, like lanterns glowing in the distance, guiding you toward a deeper rest. You do not need to understand anything. You do not need to fix anything. You do not need to reach any conclusion. Simply allow each story to arrive and to leave like waves touching the shore. Let your body settle. Let your breath soften. Let your awareness widen. And just listen. In a remote mountain monastery, where clouds often drifted between ancient peaks, 2 monks were assigned to practice walking meditation together each morning. The path they walked had been built many decades earlier. It was formed from countless old bricks donated by villagers from nearby towns. Time had not been kind to the path. Some bricks had loosened and shifted. Others had cracked or sunk. Many protruded unevenly from the ground, creating a surface that demanded careful attention with every step. After their sitting meditation each dawn, the 2 monks walked this path in silence. The garden around them was serene. Tall trees whispered in the wind. A narrow stream reflected the pale morning light. Yet, for the first monk, the beauty of the surroundings was difficult to notice. From the very first step, his mind filled with resistance. This path is unbearable, he thought. Why has no one repaired it? How can anyone cultivate awareness while constantly worrying about stumbling? His attention became trapped in criticism. He noticed every raised brick, every missing piece, every uneven hollow filled with rainwater. Instead of calm awareness, his practice became a battle with the ground beneath his feet. This is unacceptable, his thoughts repeated. How can peace exist in such conditions? Beside him, the second monk walked quietly. His expression was gentle. His steps were slow and balanced. He moved as if the uneven ground were not an obstacle, but a natural rhythm guiding his body. Weeks passed. One morning, the first monk could no longer contain his confusion. "How can you remain so peaceful?" he asked after their walk. "This path is full of flaws. The broken bricks make meditation almost impossible. How do you practice with such ease when everything is so imperfect?" The second monk paused. His voice was soft. "I think our difference is simple," he said. "You see the path as something that interferes with your practice. You believe the uneven bricks prevent mindfulness." He looked at the ground beneath them. "But I see the path itself as the practice. Every unstable brick reminds me to be present. Every uneven surface teaches balance. Every careful step calls me back to this moment." He continued quietly, "Because the path is imperfect, I cannot walk unconsciously. I cannot drift into distraction. The broken bricks invite my full awareness." He smiled gently. "Instead of obstacles, I see countless invitations to wake up. Instead of frustration, I feel gratitude. This imperfect path has taught me more than any smooth road ever could." In that moment, a deeper truth revealed itself. The path had never changed. Only perception had. One monk suffered because he resisted reality. The other awakened because he embraced it. Often, we imagine that peace will come only when conditions improve. When life becomes easier. when circumstances align with our expectations. Yet, waiting for perfection often means missing the wisdom hidden in imperfection. The broken bricks are everywhere in our lives. In difficult conversations, in financial uncertainty, in physical discomfort, in emotional challenges. Each can become either a source of suffering or a doorway to awareness. Tonight, gently notice your own broken bricks. Is there something in your life you have been waiting to change before allowing yourself to be present? What might happen if, instead of resisting it, you allowed it to become part of your practice? Each day offers a new path. Each step offers a new choice. And with every step, awareness can quietly deepen. As the night grows still, another story emerges. It is the story of salt and water. In a quiet monastery among rolling hills, an elderly master lived with his students. One young apprentice often approached him with complaints. "Master," he said one morning, "why is life so difficult? My meditation is disturbed by noise. My body aches. When will suffering end?" Day after day, his words carried the weight of accumulated frustration. The master listened patiently, but he knew that words alone would not transform understanding. One morning, he asked the apprentice to bring a handful of salt. The young man returned with coarse white crystals in his palms. The master placed a small glass of water before him. "Put all the salt into this glass," he said gently. "Then drink it." The apprentice hesitated. "That is too much salt for such little water." "Trust the process," the master replied. Reluctantly, the apprentice poured the salt into the glass and drank. His face tightened with bitterness. "How does it taste?" the master asked. "Bitter," he replied. "Almost unbearable." The master nodded. "Now bring the same salt and follow me." Together, they walked to a clear mountain lake. The water lay still, reflecting the sky like a mirror. "Place the salt into the lake," the master said. The apprentice opened his hands. The crystals disappeared into the vast water. "Now drink," the master instructed. The apprentice tasted the lake water. It was fresh and pure. "Do you taste the salt?" the master asked. The apprentice paused. "No," he said softly. "I taste nothing but clarity." The master sat beside him. "My student," he said, "the pain of life is like salt. Its amount does not change. But the bitterness you experience depends on the size of the container that holds it." He continued slowly. "When pain arises, you can become a small glass where every grain of salt overwhelms you. Or you can become a lake where the same salt dissolves without harm." He looked into the apprentice's eyes. "Do not remain a glass. Become a lake." In that moment, something shifted. Pain remained, but suffering softened. Awareness expanded. When consciousness widens, difficulties no longer dominate the mind. They become part of a larger space. Meditation expands this space. Gratitude widens it further. Compassion deepens it. Tonight, as you rest, sense the difference between being a glass and being a lake. Allow your awareness to grow gently. Let experiences arise and dissolve within a vast inner stillness. And now, another quiet tale unfolds. It is the story of following the stream. Deep within an endless forest, two travelers found themselves lost. They had ventured far beyond familiar trails. Night had passed. Fear slowly replaced confidence. Every tree looked the same. Every direction felt uncertain. Just as despair began to rise, they encountered an old hermit sitting peacefully beside a clearing. "How do we find our way back?" they asked urgently. The hermit looked at them with calm eyes. "I could tell you," he said, "but you would still get lost." Confused, they asked again, "What should we do?" "Follow the flow," he replied. He pointed toward a small stream. "Follow the water. Streams lead to rivers, and rivers lead to towns. Along the way, you will find water to drink and food to eat." The travelers nodded, but one of them asked quietly, "Is this what spiritual teachers mean when they say, 'Go with the flow'?" The hermit smiled. "Yes and no," he said softly and walked away. In that moment, the travelers understood only part of his words, but the deeper meaning weighted beyond understanding. To follow the stream is not to drift without direction. It is to align with the natural movement of life. Not to escape effort, but to move with awareness. Not to surrender wisdom, but to trust it. Like water finding its way to the ocean, each of us carries an inner current. When we stop resisting it, it quietly guides us home. And as these stories settle within you, there is nothing more to do. No lesson to remember. No insight to hold. Only the gentle rhythm of breath and the quiet presence beneath thought. Let the mind soften. Let the body rest. And allow sleep to arrive like a silent visitor, returning you to the stillness that has always been here. The stream was not only water moving through the forest. It was a quiet symbol of the deeper order that flows beneath all things. When we learn to move with this hidden current, our actions begin to feel lighter, more natural, less forced. We no longer push against life. We begin to cooperate with it. Yet this way of living requires a different kind of understanding. The travelers wanted precise instructions, because the ordinary mind seeks certainty, clear maps, and fixed answers. But the wisdom the hermit hinted at was not a list of directions. It was a subtle sensitivity, an inner listening, a moment-by-moment awareness that knows where to step without needing to see the entire road. The stream does not plan its journey to the ocean. It simply flows where the land gently guides it. In the same way, when awareness becomes steady, each moment reveals its own quiet answer. We do not need to solve the whole of life at once. We only need to feel the next step. Tonight, as you move through your own questions and responsibilities, you may sense a gentle current beneath the surface of thought. What would it feel like to trust that current, while still caring for the details of daily life? A single candle can light countless others without losing its own flame. The hermit's words were like such a candle, not giving a destination, but illuminating a way of seeing. And now, another story begins to unfold. A young student had devoted himself to meditation with sincerity and hope. Each morning and evening, he sat quietly, following the rhythm of his breath as he had been taught. Sometimes the practice felt soft and clear. At other times, it felt heavy and restless. Recently, the difficulties had grown stronger. On one morning, he could barely remain still for a few minutes. His mind raced through unfinished tasks, memories, and worries. His body ached. Sleepiness pulled him downward, while agitation pushed him in the opposite direction. No matter how hard he tried, peace seemed far away. After a short time, he abandoned his cushion and walked to find his teacher. He discovered the elderly monk in the garden behind the hall, quietly tending the soil beneath the early sunlight. "Teacher," the student said softly, "my meditation is terrible. My mind is scattered. My body hurts. Nothing feels right." The teacher listened without interruption. His eyes were calm, as though he had heard these words many times before. When the student finished, the teacher simply said, "It will pass." Then he returned to his gardening. The student stood there in silence. He had expected advice, a new technique, or reassurance. Instead, he received only a few simple words. Carrying both confusion and curiosity, he returned to his practice. In the days that followed, something slowly changed. The intensity of distraction softened. His body adapted to stillness. Moments of quiet clarity began to appear between thoughts. By the end of the week, his meditation felt entirely different. Filled with excitement, he sought out his teacher again. This time, the monk was sweeping leaves in the courtyard. "Teacher," the student said with bright eyes, "my meditation is wonderful now. My mind is clear. My body feels light. Everything feels alive and peaceful." The teacher paused, looked at him gently, and repeated the same words. "It will pass." This time, the student heard something deeper. His joy did not vanish, but it softened into understanding. He realized that the teacher was not speaking only about meditation, but about the nature of all experience. Everything that arises also fades. Pleasure and discomfort, clarity and confusion, success and difficulty, all are visitors. Much of our suffering comes from forgetting this. We cling to pleasant moments and fight against unpleasant ones. We try to freeze what is beautiful and escape what is painful. But life does not stand still. The teacher's words pointed to a deeper stability, not in conditions, but in awareness itself. Awareness remains, while experiences come and go like clouds across the sky. Tonight, as you notice your own states of mind and body, you may see how gently they change. Nothing needs to be forced. Nothing needs to be held. You can allow each moment to arrive and to leave. In this allowing, a quiet freedom appears. And now, the story continues. In a valley where cherry trees bloomed in silence, a young seeker heard of a renowned Zen master. Stories of profound realization filled his imagination. Driven by urgency, he traveled many days to reach the master's monastery. His heart burned with ambition. He wanted awakening quickly, as if it were something to conquer. When he arrived, he bowed deeply before the master. "Master," he said, "if I dedicate myself completely, how long will it take to understand Zen?" The master watched him quietly for a long moment. 10 years, he replied. The young man was surprised. 10 years seems too long, he said. What if I work harder than anyone else? If I practice more intensely, how long then? The master considered this gently. 20 years, he said. Confusion appeared on the student's face. Then what if I give everything to practice? If I push myself beyond all limits? How long will it take then? The master answered calmly, 30 years. The young man could not understand. In every skill, he said, greater effort brings faster results. Why is it different here? The master smiled with kindness. When you keep one eye on the goal, he said softly, you have only one eye on the path. In that moment, a quiet truth revealed itself. When attention is divided between now and later, the present moment is never fully lived. Awakening does not arise from chasing a future state. It emerges from complete presence. Like trying to catch your own shadow, the more urgently you pursue it, the further it seems to move away. When effort becomes obsession, practice turns into grasping. But when attention becomes whole, understanding unfolds naturally. Tonight, as your mind imagines distant destinations, peace to be found, clarity to be achieved, a future self to become, you may gently return to this moment. Here, nothing is missing. The path is not elsewhere. It is beneath your feet. And now, another quiet wisdom appears. Along a mountain road where wildflowers swayed in the wind, a traveler met a shepherd resting beside his flock. The sky was uncertain, half clear, half clouded. "Friend," the traveler asked, "what kind of weather will we have today?" The shepherd smiled. "The kind of weather I like," he said. The traveler was puzzled. "How can you be sure of that?" The shepherd looked toward the sky. "Because," he said gently, "I have learned that I cannot always get what I want. So I learned to want what I receive." In that simple answer, a profound freedom appeared. True contentment does not come from controlling the world. It comes from releasing the struggle against it. When we stop demanding that reality match our preferences, peace begins to appear naturally. Tonight, as the day settles behind you, you may sense this possibility. You do not need to change the weather of your life to find calm. Sometimes, it is enough to change the way you meet it. And as these stories continue to flow, there is nothing you need to remember. Let the mind soften. Let the breath slow. The stream is still moving. The lake is still wide. The path is still beneath your feet. And quietly, sleep begins to arrive. Though her dedication was sincere, awakening still seemed distant. She could explain subtle teachings with clarity. She could speak of emptiness and unity with confidence. She could even guide younger students through simple meditation. Yet the final realization, the quiet shift that changes everything, remained just beyond her reach. Years moved quietly past her. At times, doubt arose in her heart. She watched others glimpse insights that she could not yet touch. She questioned her methods, deepened her discipline, and sometimes wondered if something essential was missing within her. One evening, after long hours of practice and study, she walked slowly across the monastery courtyard. In her hands, she carried an old wooden bucket filled with water from the well. The bucket had been repaired many times with thin strips of bamboo. It had served faithfully, yet she could feel its fragility with each step. The night was still. Above her, the full moon floated in the dark sky, casting a gentle silver light across the temple grounds. But what captured her attention was not the moon above. It was the moon within the water she carried. Inside the bucket, a perfect circle of light shimmered, clear, whole, and luminous. She walked carefully, almost reverently, watching the reflected moon tremble with every movement. For a moment, it felt as though she were carrying something sacred, as though the moon itself had chosen to travel with her. Then, without warning, the weakened bamboo strips gave way. The bottom of the bucket collapsed. Water spilled across the earth in a single instant, and with it, the moon disappeared. No water, no moon. In that exact moment, as the reflection vanished, something within her opened completely. All her years of striving, all her searching, all her effort, fell away. What she had been chasing had never been separate from her. Like the moon in the water, awakening had seemed distant and fragile, yet it was only the natural expression of what had always been present. Realization did not arrive through grasping, but through release. Not through accumulation, but through letting go. Her long years of practice were not wasted. They were preparation, like soil softened before seeds can grow. Yet the breakthrough came only when she stopped trying to hold enlightenment and simply witnessed its arising and dissolving. Often, we search for what is already here. The seeking mind creates distance between itself and what it longs for. When we imagine awakening as something outside ourselves, we overlook the awareness that is already seeing, already listening, already present. Perhaps you have felt this too, the sense of chasing peace, trying to grasp clarity, reaching toward a state that always seems just beyond reach. And yet, the very awareness that seeks is already what it seeks. Practice is not meaningless. Discipline is not wasted. But wisdom often blooms when effort softens into trust. Like carrying water that may spill at any moment, we learn to walk with care, without clinging to what cannot be held. Sometimes, the deepest understanding arrives when the container breaks and the reflection disappears. And now, another story begins. In a quiet monastery garden, where morning dew rested on winding paths, a young seeker approached his teacher. His eyes carried both determination and confusion. "Master," he said softly, "I wish to understand my life more clearly. Why do I carry my past everywhere I go? Why does it follow me again and again?" The teacher studied him with gentle compassion. Then he pointed toward a maze of translucent silk panels glowing in the filtered sunlight. "Walk into the maze," he said, "but carry this with you." He placed a leather backpack into the young man's hands. "It will help you remain focused," the teacher added. "But be careful. It is heavy." The seeker accepted the pack. At first, it seemed ordinary. But the moment it rested on his shoulders, he felt an unexpected weight. Each step forward required effort. Inside the maze, he encountered walls of shimmering silk. Through the translucent fabric, he saw other travelers moving like distant shadows. Every direction seemed blocked. Exhausted, he sat down. "Others seem ahead of me," he thought. "Should I cheat and pass through the walls?" After long hesitation, he chose patience and honesty. As he stood again, a narrow opening appeared. He moved forward until another barrier stopped him. The backpack pressed heavily into his shoulders. Curious, he removed it and looked inside. It was empty. Yet when he lifted it again, the weight remained. As he placed it back on his back, a quiet voice whispered within him, "The weight is not in the bag. It is within you." Suddenly, memories flooded his mind. Old wounds, unspoken resentments, moments of humiliation and grief. With each memory, the backpack grew heavier, and then understanding arose. "I am the weight. I carry what I refuse to release." From that moment, he began to forgive. "I release you," he whispered, to people, to moments, to himself. With each act of forgiveness, the burden lightened. Paths opened. Warm sunlight touched his face. Eventually, the backpack felt weightless. Standing in stillness, he realized, "I was the obstacle, and I am also the way." In that moment, his feet lifted gently from the ground. He floated above the maze, seeing how others remained trapped by burdens they believed were real. With a quiet thought, he found himself beside his teacher. "Master," he said softly, "I saw that my darkness created my weight, and my understanding made me light." The teacher smiled, said nothing, and walked away. Holding on to anger is like grasping a burning coal with the intention of throwing it at someone else. We are the ones who are burned. The past does not imprison us. Our attachment to it does. The empty backpack is the invisible weight of unprocessed pain. We often cling to suffering because it has become familiar. We mistake forgiveness for weakness, not realizing it is freedom. Tonight, as you prepare for rest, you may gently ask yourself, what weight am I still carrying? And what would it feel like to set it down? And now, one more quiet teaching unfolds. In a monastery garden filled with ancient trees and silent ponds, a master walked beside his student. The student noticed a massive stone resting near the center of the garden. Covered in moss, it had stood there for countless years. Eager to demonstrate his understanding, the student turned to his teacher. "Master," he said, "the teachings say that all phenomena exist within mind. So tell me, is that stone inside my mind or outside it?" The teacher looked at him quietly. After a moment he smiled. "You must have a very heavy mind," he said gently, "to carry such a stone within it." The student stood in silence. In one simple sentence, his master had revealed something profound. Often, we transform simple experience into complicated problems. We carry ideas, concepts, and questions like stones in the mind. The stone in the garden was never a burden. The burden was the thinking that tried to possess it. Sometimes, wisdom is not found in adding answers, but in laying down unnecessary thoughts. Tonight, as your mind slowly quiets, you may notice how many stones you have been carrying. And without effort, you can allow them to gently fall away. Often, this same pattern quietly unfolds in ordinary moments of our lives. A simple feeling arises within us, perhaps a quiet sadness, and almost instantly, the mind begins to dissect it. We search for causes, build stories, interpret meanings, and design strategies to fix what was never broken. What began as a gentle wave of emotion slowly becomes a heavy construction of thought that we carry across the day. A small misunderstanding with a friend may follow a similar path. Instead of meeting it directly, we transform it into a complex mental drama, analyzing personalities, replaying conversations, predicting outcomes. The simplicity of human connection becomes buried beneath layers of explanation, until clarity feels distant and resolution feels impossible. In spiritual practice, this tendency appears as a subtle form of accumulation. We collect teachings, techniques, insights, and concepts as if they were treasures. Yet over time, these treasures become burdens. Rather than resting in awareness, we carry libraries of ideas into meditation, forgetting that stillness requires no decoration. A Zen master once said, "Every day is a good day." These words do not deny difficulty. They point toward a way of meeting life without adding unnecessary weight. A stone in a garden is simply a stone. It can be seen, touched, or passed by without being turned into a philosophical puzzle. The teacher in the story did not reject his student's question. He simply revealed the cost of excessive thinking, the heaviness it creates in the heart and mind. By comparing thoughts to physical weight, he made an invisible burden visible. This teaching does not ask us to abandon intelligence or inquiry. Understanding has its place. But wisdom arises when we learn to distinguish between thoughts that serve life and thoughts that quietly drain it. We can watch a sunset without explaining it. We can feel love without defining it. We can sit in silence without imagining enlightenment. The Buddha spoke of simplicity, patience, and compassion as the greatest treasures. Perhaps the deepest treasure is realizing how much we never needed to carry. Tonight, as the world grows quieter, notice whether your mind is holding stones. Old worries about tomorrow. Intricate interpretations of yesterday. Endless calculations about what might happen next. What would it feel like to set these stones down, even for a moment? Peace does not come from finding better thoughts. Sometimes it comes from realizing that not every thought needs to be held. And so our journey continues. Now we turn toward another story, one that reveals the difference between helping and holding on. Two monks once walked together along a narrow mountain path. They were devoted practitioners, bound by vows that shaped their discipline and guided their conduct. Among these vows was a rule to avoid physical contact with women, not from rejection, but from a desire to preserve inner clarity. As they approached a swollen river, they saw a young woman standing at the edge of the rushing water. The bridge had been destroyed by storms, and the current was fierce. Fear was written on her face. "Please," she called gently, "could one of you help me cross?" The first monk hesitated, his mind filled with rules, interpretations, and possible consequences. He searched for reasons not to act. The second monk did not hesitate. Seeing only a human being in danger, he stepped forward, lifted her carefully onto his shoulders, and carried her across the river. When they reached the other side, he set her down, bowed, and returned to the path. It does. Hours later, as they walked in silence, the first monk's thoughts grew heavier. Finally, he spoke with agitation. "Brother," he said, "how could you break our vow? You carried that woman across the river." The second monk looked at him calmly. "I put her down hours ago," he said softly, "but you are still carrying her." In this moment, a profound truth was revealed. We often release events in the world, yet continue to hold them tightly in the mind. The river crossing ended long ago, but suffering continued because it was carried forward through thought. How many moments in your life have ended, yet still live within you? Old conversations, past mistakes, words spoken and never forgotten. The present moment stands open and alive, yet we walk through it burdened by memories that no longer exist except in imagination. The wise monk acted when action was needed, then released the moment completely. He did not replay it, judge it, or defend it. He simply moved on. This is not indifference. It is freedom. Tonight, as your thoughts drift toward what has already passed, remember the monk who set the woman down. Ask yourself gently, what am I still carrying that no longer needs to be held? To let go is not to forget. It is to allow life to move again. And now we enter another story, one that speaks of belief and doubt, of hope and the quiet power of the mind. A tired man once walked through a forest, his heart heavy with worry. Debt, disappointment, and delayed dreams followed him like shadows. The beauty of the trees and the softness of the light went unnoticed, for his thoughts were louder than the world around him. Exhausted, he leaned against a large tree and whispered, almost without intention, "I wish I had something to drink." In his hand appeared a cup of clear water. He stared at it in disbelief, then drank. The water was cool and refreshing, as if it had always been meant for him. Soon hunger arose, and he wished for food. A simple meal appeared before him. He ate slowly, wonder growing in his heart. Realizing what was happening, he began to wish more boldly. A home appeared in a nearby meadow. Servants arrived. Companionship followed. For a moment, his life transformed into something he had never dared to imagine. But then doubt whispered. "This cannot be real," he said. "People like me do not receive such gifts." As soon as he spoke, everything faded. The house disappeared. The companions vanished. The forest returned to silence. He walked away, returning to familiar worries. This story reminds us of the quiet power of belief. Often, we trust our limitations more than our possibilities. We become so accustomed to struggle that abundance feels unreal. How many gifts have passed through your life unnoticed because they did not match your expectations of yourself? The wishing tree reflects the mind itself. When we approach life with openness, possibilities appear. When we approach with doubt, they dissolve. Tonight, as your thoughts soften, ask yourself gently, what if I am more worthy than I have believed? And finally, we arrive at a story of flow and resistance. An old sage once fell into a raging river during a storm. The villagers watched in horror as he was swept toward a waterfall. They were certain he would not survive. Yet when they reached the bottom of the falls, they saw him walking calmly to the shore, unharmed. When asked how he survived, he answered simply, "I did not fight the water. I moved with it." In these words lies a quiet wisdom. Life is always moving. When we resist it, we suffer. When we flow with it, we discover unexpected strength. Tonight, as your breath slows and your thoughts grow lighter, remember the water. You do not need to control every current. Sometimes, the deepest safety comes from allowing yourself to move with life rather than against it. And in this gentle movement, the mind becomes quiet. The heart becomes soft, and sleep arrives, not as escape, but as peace. Or we may learn another way. Instead of forcing life to obey our will, we can begin to cooperate with what is already here. Rather than pushing against the current, we discover how to move with it, quietly, wisely, and with patience. A Zen teacher once spoke of water. Water is gentle, flexible, and soft. Yet over time, it shapes even the hardest stone. What appears weak may carry the deepest strength when guided by understanding. The Buddha taught that hatred cannot end hatred, but only love can dissolve it. This truth reaches far beyond anger. Every form of resistance carries the same lesson. When we fight life directly, we often strengthen the very forces we wish to escape. When we understand life, we begin to transform it from within. Look softly into your own life. Where are you trying to force the river to change direction? Where are you struggling against circumstances that cannot be moved? What might happen if, instead of fighting the water, you learn to swim within it while holding on to your deepest values? Tonight, as the currents of life continue to flow, unexpected changes, difficult people, uncertain outcomes, remember the wisdom of the old man by the waterfall. You can remain centered even while moving with what cannot be controlled. Sometimes the most direct path forward is not through the obstacle, but around it. In the end, wisdom teaches us that only a few things truly matter: how deeply we have lived, how sincerely we have loved, and how gently we have learned to let go. To flow with life does not mean surrendering our awareness. It means releasing the illusion that we must control everything. Like water, we can be both strong and yielding, both persistent and gentle, both steady and adaptable. And now, let us turn toward another story, one that reveals the quiet power of fearlessness. During an age of conflict in ancient lands, armies moved across villages like storms. When news spread that a powerful general was approaching, people fled in fear. They carried what little they could and disappeared into the mountains, leaving behind empty streets and silent homes. In one small village, everyone ran, except an old Zen master who lived in a humble temple at the center of town. When the army arrived, the general noticed smoke rising from the temple chimney. Curiosity drew him toward the place. He expected to find a frightened old man, perhaps too weak to escape. Instead, he found the master calmly tending his garden, as if nothing unusual were happening. The general was accustomed to fear. Wherever he traveled, people bowed, pleaded, and trembled before him. This quiet man, however, showed no sign of submission or alarm. Anger rose within the general. He reached for his sword and shouted, "Do you not realize that you stand before a man who could end your life in an instant?" The master continued tending his flowers. When he finally looked up, his gaze was clear and peaceful. "And do you realize," he replied gently, "that you stand before a man who can lose his life without blinking an eye?" The general froze. In all his years of war, he had never encountered such calm acceptance. He had seen courage, rage, and defiance, but he had never seen fearlessness rooted in peace. Slowly, he returned his sword to its sheath. Without another word, he turned and left the temple behind. The village was spared, not by force, but by the presence of one man who could not be shaken. The Buddha taught that all things are impermanent. When we truly accept this, something profound changes within us. Most of our fear does not come from danger itself. It comes from clinging to what is temporary. When we release this clinging, threats lose their power. The general's authority depended on fear. But someone who has already accepted the fragility of life cannot be controlled by fear. The master's strength was not bravado. It was the quiet clarity of someone who had made peace with change. Look into your own life. How much fear arises from attachment to comfort, reputation, or security? True freedom is not found in being untouchable, but in having nothing that can be taken away from your essence. Tonight, as you feel the pressures of life, remember the master in the garden. Acceptance does not weaken you. It gives you an unshakable presence that no external force can disturb. And now we move toward a story of desire and contentment. High in the mountains lived a simple stone cutter. Each morning he walked winding paths to the quarry, carrying his tools and singing quiet songs. His home was modest, his possessions few, yet his heart was light. He desired nothing beyond the rhythm of his work and the beauty of the mountains. One day, he was called to work on a grand estate. As he saw its vast halls and elegant gardens, a sharp longing entered his heart. "If only I were rich," he sighed. To his astonishment, his wish was granted. His humble hut became a magnificent mansion. Luxury replaced simplicity, and comfort replaced labor. Yet soon he saw the king passing by in royal splendor. A new desire arose. "I wish I were a king." And he became one. But the sun's heat troubled him, so he wished to become the sun. Clouds blocked his power, so he wished to become a cloud. Rain met an unyielding rock, so he wished to become a rock. Yet even as a rock, he heard the sound of chisels. A small man was shaping stone. "I wish to be a man again," he whispered. And he returned to his former life as a stone cutter. But this time, something had changed. As he climbed the mountain paths and felt the wind on his face, a deep contentment filled his heart. He understood that happiness had never been missing. He had simply overlooked it. The Buddha taught that contentment is the greatest wealth. Desire leads us from one form to another, from one dream to the next. Yet each transformation reveals another longing. Look into your own life. How often do you believe happiness lies in becoming something else? Promotion, wealth, recognition, or change? Each goal achieved reveals another mountain beyond it. True contentment does not come from changing circumstances. It arises from changing awareness. Tonight, as your mind reaches for what is not here, pause gently. Listen for the quiet song that emerges when you stop trying to be different from what you are. And now, we enter another story, one that reveals the difference between knowledge and true awareness. A monk named Tenno trained for many years in meditation and study. His understanding was deep, his discipline strong, and his ability to teach widely recognized. When he was finally acknowledged as a teacher, pride quietly entered his heart. Seeking further refinement, he visited a renowned master named Nanin. On a rainy day, he arrived at the temple, removed his shoes, placed his umbrella on the porch, and entered to meet the master. After a brief conversation, Nanin asked a simple question. "Tell me, when you entered, did you place your umbrella to the left of your shoes or to the right?" Tenno was stunned. He searched his memory but could not recall. He realized that while his mind was filled with lofty ideas, he had been absent from a simple moment. "I do not know," he admitted softly. Nanin smiled gently. "Then your awareness is not yet complete," he said. In that moment, Tenno understood something essential. Awareness is not confined to meditation halls or sacred teachings. It is revealed in ordinary actions, the way we walk, the way we listen, the way we place our belongings. He asked to become Nanin's student. For many years, he learned to bring the same attention to everyday life that he brought to formal practice. When he finally left the temple, he had become a different kind of teacher. He understood that awakening is not a destination, but a way of traveling. Tonight, as your thoughts begin to slow, remember this quiet truth. Awareness is not something rare or distant. It lives in each breath, each movement, each simple moment. And as you rest within this gentle presence, the mind becomes lighter, the heart becomes still, and sleep arrives naturally, like a calm river returning to the sea. True practice is not something separate from life. It is not confined to meditation cushions, quiet halls, or sacred hours. It is woven silently into the smallest gestures of each day. Think for a moment about your own ordinary movements. When you wash your hands, do you feel the water touching your skin? When you walk across a room, do you sense the ground beneath your feet? When you prepare a simple drink, are you truly there, or is your mind already elsewhere? Often, we reserve attention for moments we consider important. Yet it is precisely in the unnoticed moments that awareness reveals its depth. The distance between formal practice and daily life is not a problem to solve, but a doorway inviting us to awaken more fully. In the spirit of Zen, there is no difference between the path and the destination. Awareness is not something we reach someday. It is something we inhabit now, breath by breath, step by step. When a teacher asks a simple question, it is rarely about the object being discussed. It is about whether consciousness has permeated the invisible layers of habit. Can presence remain alive even when the mind is not trying to be spiritual? The teachings of the Buddha remind us that wakefulness is life itself. When we are absent, even while alive, we move like shadows through our own days. But when we are present, even the simplest act becomes luminous. Look gently into your own life. Where do you bring full attention? And where do you drift into automatic motion? This is not an invitation to strain or control every detail. It is an invitation to recognize that the same quiet clarity you touch in meditation can flow naturally into everything you do. In Zen monasteries, students learn that no task is ordinary. To clean a floor is as meaningful as chanting a sacred verse. To wash a bowl is as profound as studying ancient texts. Not because these actions are special, but because the mind that performs them determines their depth. When you wash a cup, you are not only washing a cup. You are touching the present moment with your entire being. In that moment, life is complete. The teacher's question revealed something subtle. Training had strengthened awareness during intentional practice, yet awareness had not fully merged with the rhythm of everyday life. It is easy to be mindful when we decide to be mindful. The deeper practice is to let mindfulness become natural, effortless, unforced. Tonight, as you move through the quiet rituals that end your day, feel the weight of your toothbrush, the texture of your clothes, the stillness of the room around you. Without effort, without judgment, simply notice. In these unnoticed moments, you may discover whether your practice has become a living presence or remains confined to special hours. Every place is a classroom. Every moment is a teacher. Sometimes the most ordinary scene reveals the exact place where awakening is waiting. True awakening is not found by escaping the mundane, but by recognizing the sacred hidden within it. And as this understanding deepens, another teaching quietly unfolds before us, the teaching of impermanence. There is a story of a place that called itself a palace, yet was in truth no more than an inn. Long ago, a wandering teacher traveled from village to village, offering words of clarity to anyone who wished to listen. He carried no possessions of value, only a calm presence and a mind free of grasping. One day, he arrived in a great city where a magnificent palace rose above the streets. Its walls shimmered with stone and gold. Its gardens breathed fragrance into the air. Its gates stood guarded by figures clad in armor and pride. Without hesitation, the teacher walked toward the entrance. The guards, sensing something beyond appearance, allowed him to pass. He moved through corridors filled with luxury until he reached the throne room, where a king sat surrounded by wealth and power. The king looked at the teacher with curiosity and authority. "What do you seek?" he asked. The teacher bowed slightly and spoke with quiet simplicity. "I am looking for a place to rest for the night, in this inn." A ripple of surprise passed through the court. The king frowned gently. "This is not an inn," he said. "This is my palace. It has belonged to my family for generations." The teacher listened attentively. "And before you," he asked softly, "who lived here?" "My father," the king replied. "And before him?" "My grandfather," the king said, his voice slowing. The teacher paused, letting silence settle like dust in sunlight. "So," he said at last, "people come here, stay for a time, and then leave. And yet you say this is not an inn." The words did not accuse. They simply revealed. In that moment, the king felt something shift within him, not fear, not anger, but a quiet recognition. Everything that appears solid is quietly passing away. The Buddha taught that all conditioned things are impermanent. Nothing we grasp can remain unchanged. Look into your own life. The home you live in, the roles you carry, the identities you protect, all are temporary dwellings. This does not mean they lack meaning. It means they are fragile, precious, and fleeting. When we forget this, we suffer. When we remember it, we become free. To hold lightly does not mean to love less. It means to love without fear of loss. We are travelers passing through an uncalled life. We borrow names, relationships, achievements, and forms. Then one day we move on. When this truth is seen clearly, it can feel frightening, or it can feel liberating. Because if nothing is permanent, then transformation is always possible. Pain can soften. Fear can dissolve. Hearts can open. In the quiet of the night, as you rest among your temporary possessions, feel the gentle freedom of knowing that nothing needs to be held too tightly. From this awareness, another story flows like water. There is a tale of a river made of crystal light. At the bottom of this river lived many small creatures. They clung to stones and roots, believing that holding on was the only way to survive. "Do not let go," the elders warned. "The current is dangerous. Safety lies in staying exactly where you are." But one small creature felt something different. He watched the current with wonder. He felt tired of grasping, tired of fear. One day he said, "I will release my grip. I do not know where the current leads, but I trust that it knows the way." The others cried out in alarm. "If you let go, you will be destroyed," they warned. Yet he released his hold. At first, he was thrown against rocks, carried through chaos and pain. But gradually, something changed. The current lifted him upward, away from the sharp stones, into a flow that felt effortless and alive. He was no longer fighting the river. He had become part of it. Creatures downstream saw him and cried, "Look, a miracle, a savior." But he replied gently, "I am no savior. The river lifts everyone who dares to let go." Still, they clung more tightly to their stones. The Buddha taught that we lose only what we cling to. Our suffering often comes not from change, but from resisting it. Where in your life are you holding too tightly? A role? A memory? An image of who you must be? The current of life moves whether we resist or not. When we surrender with awareness, we discover a grace that struggle cannot create. Tonight, in the stillness of your breath, what might you be ready to release? And as the river of experience flows quietly through you, another story emerges, a story about choice. A young student once tried to challenge his teacher. He caught a small bird and hid it in his hands. "Master," he asked, "is this bird alive or dead?" He believed he had created an impossible question. But the teacher looked at him with calm eyes and said softly, "The answer is in your hands." In that moment, the student understood something deeper than any lesson. Power, responsibility, and freedom were not outside him. They were already his. When he opened his hands, the bird flew into the sky. The Buddha taught that our world is shaped by our thoughts. Every moment we choose. Every breath we decide. True teachers do not give answers. They return us to our own awareness. And now, as your mind begins to soften, as the edges of thought grow quiet, remember gently. The path is not somewhere else. It is here, in this breath, in this silence, in this moment. You do not need to grasp. You do not need to struggle. You only need to rest. And slowly, like a leaf floating on a calm river, You can allow yourself to drift into stillness, into spaciousness, into sleep. Even when we feel trapped, even when we believe there is no way forward, choice is still quietly present. Sometimes it hides beneath fear. Sometimes it sleeps beneath habit. Sometimes it is covered by the belief that we are powerless. Yet awareness and choice are inseparable. To be conscious is already to stand at a crossroads. When you look at your life right now, where do you feel that decisions belong to others? Where do you wait for someone to rescue you, to decide for you, to carry the weight of your path? External events may be beyond your control, but the way you meet them is always yours. Each thought is a seed. Each intention is a direction. Each action is a quiet shaping of destiny. In every moment, you hold something fragile and precious in your hands. You can nurture it, or you can close your fists around it. Tonight, as you reflect on the places where you feel uncertain or lost, sense gently that dignity of choice within you. Not as a burden, but as a quiet form of freedom. No one can walk your path for you. No one can breathe your breath. No one can awaken in your place. The bird flies not because of wisdom spoken by another, but because of a hand that chooses to open. And from this understanding, another story rises like mist from a silent valley. Long ago, in a land of shifting battles and fragile alliances, a warrior was captured after defeat. His armor was taken from him. His weapons were removed. His identity as a fighter dissolved in a single evening. He was thrown into a narrow cell of stone, where darkness pressed against his senses and silence felt heavier than iron. As night descended, his mind filled with images of tomorrow. Questions became threats. Threats became pain. Pain became visions of death. His heart raced. His breath shortened. Sleep vanished like smoke. He walked the small space of his prison again and again, yet there was no escape from the future his mind was creating. Then, in the deepest hour of despair, a memory surfaced. It was the voice of his old teacher, soft and steady, as if it were speaking from within his own chest. "Tomorrow is not here," the voice whispered. "Only this moment exists." At first, the warrior resisted the teaching. How could tomorrow be unreal when danger felt so close and inevitable? But slowly, he allowed the words to settle. He noticed his breath moving in and out. He felt the rough straw beneath his body. He heard the wind passing through distant trees. In this moment, no torture was happening. In this moment, no execution had begun. In this moment, there was only a man sitting quietly in a cell. The future he feared revealed itself as a story his mind was telling. As this realization deepened, his body softened. His breathing slowed. His heart found rhythm again. For the first time since his capture, a faint smile appeared on his face. He had discovered that the most oppressive prison was not built of stone, but of thought. And within moments, he fell into a deep and peaceful sleep. We often suffer not from reality, but from the images we project onto it. The mind was shaped to protect us, to anticipate danger, to prepare for survival. Yet when imagination replaces presence, fear becomes our constant companion. How much of your anxiety comes from scenes that have not yet happened? Conversations that may never occur, outcomes that may never unfold, losses that exist only in thought? Planning has its place. Preparation has its value. But when preparation becomes obsession, it steals the quiet richness of now. Everything changes. Nothing is fixed. Even the most certain future is woven from conditions beyond our knowing. The warrior could not know what the morning would bring, nor can we. When attention returns to the present, something subtle shifts. The same circumstances remain, yet suffering transforms into clarity. Tonight, as your mind begins to wander toward tomorrow, gently bring it back. Feel the air around you. Feel the rhythm of your breath. Feel the weight of your body resting. Here, in this moment, there is nothing to fear. And as awareness deepens, another teaching reveals itself, the wisdom of effortless mastery. In an ancient household, a cook moved through his work with quiet grace. His hands were steady. His movements were fluid. His blade seemed to glide rather than cut. To those who watched, his labor looked less like work and more like a dance shaped by invisible music. A noble lord, observing him, was struck by the harmony of each motion. "You must have practiced for many years," he said with admiration. The cook smiled gently. "What guides me is not technique alone," he replied. "I follow the natural way of things." When he first began his craft, he saw only resistance. The task felt heavy. Every cut required force. Over time, his perception changed. He began to see patterns. He learned the hidden spaces where movement was possible. Eventually, he no longer relied on sight or calculation. His hands moved where the way opened naturally. He did not fight the structure of what he touched. He listened to it. Because he never forced his blade, it never dulled. True mastery, he realized, is not the art of conquering, but the art of cooperating with reality. In our own lives, how often do we struggle against what is? How often do we push where gentleness would open doors? We are taught that success requires pressure, that progress demands struggle. Yet wisdom suggests another path. In relationships, understanding often arises not from argument, but from listening. In creativity, beauty emerges not from force, but from allowing something to unfold. In spiritual practice, depth is not born from tension, but from surrender. When we move with the natural flow of circumstances, effort becomes ease. Resistance becomes guidance. Tonight, as you consider the challenges ahead, imagine meeting them with softness rather than force. Instead of asking, "What must I overcome?" ask quietly, "Where is the opening?" And from this gentle insight, a final story comes forward. A story of fearless compassion. One evening, a Zen master sat alone in his modest home, reciting ancient verses by candlelight. The room was still. The air was calm. Suddenly, the door burst open. A desperate man entered, holding a sword that trembled in his hand. "Give me your money," he demanded, his voice shaking with fear and urgency. The master did not rise. He did not shout. He did not even look startled. "Please do not interrupt my practice," he said softly. "If you need money, it is in the drawer over there." Confused, the thief hesitated. Then he walked to the drawer and took what he found. As he turned to leave, the master spoke again. "Leave a little," he said gently. "I will need it tomorrow." The thief returned some coins, his mind spinning in disbelief. Just as he was about to flee, the master added calmly, "You have taken something from me, yet you have not said thank you." The thief stood frozen. His sword lowered. His voice broke. "Thank you," he whispered, and disappeared into the night. Later, when the man was caught and brought before a court, the master testified with quiet clarity. "He did not steal from me," he said. I gave him the money freely. In the thief's heart, something opened that had long been closed. Years later, he returned as a student, learning slowly the courage of compassion. Force can be met with force. Fear can be answered with fear. But transformation arises only from love. When we respond to hostility with peace, we interrupt the endless cycle of conflict. This does not mean weakness. It means strength that is no longer afraid. In every moment, there is a space between stimulus and response. In that space, choice lives. Tonight, as you encounter your own moments of tension, remember the master who saw a robber not as an enemy, but as a human being lost in fear. Perhaps true courage is not the absence of danger, but the presence of compassion. And now, as these stories fade into silence, you may feel something soft within you. Peace was never distant. It was always beneath your thoughts. There is nothing you need to fix, nothing you need to achieve, nothing you need to hold. Let your breath slow. Let your body sink gently into rest. Like a quiet monk sitting beneath an ancient tree, you are already home. There is nowhere else to go. Sleep comes naturally when the mind no longer struggles. And so, rest now.